All right, hey everybody, happy Monday. 10 Tampa Bay Meteorologist Grant Gilmore here. It's about 10:15. If you're watching this back from when we were recording live, which many of you watching right now, good morning to you, good to see you. Got the comments streaming over here just off to the side of the camera, so if you'd like to just pop in, say hello, say good morning. I'd be happy to chat with you guys. Otherwise, you can just sit back and listen in. A lot to talk about, but not a lot to talk about all at the same time. So we'll get to that. But got several cameras up around the area showing you really the nice looking weather that we've got. Looking at downtown Tampa right now, mostly sunny skies. The beaches, they look nice, but red tide causing some issues. In fact, I just heard our assignment desk talking about our helicopter is going to be flying over the Pinellas County beaches right now to give you that visual of that red tide bloom, which is just sitting off the shore. I'll show you the latest report from the FWC in just a couple of minutes. But otherwise, aside from red tide and pollen, it looks really nice outside. It really is gorgeous. Early March, especially for people who are down here for maybe spring break, spring training, or a usual snowbird down this way. This is what you want. You want the warmth, you want the sunshine that you just crave when you're up north and you're still dealing with winter weather. But right now, looking really nice out there. Let me show you a closer look at, let's see, where are we gonna go here? Clearwater Beach, looking really nice here. In fact, when I show you these red tide concentration maps here in just a second, Clearwater Beach did have a report of some low levels of red tide. The higher concentrations are farther south, closer to St. Pete Beach and down into like Madeira Beach, Indian Rocks, Treasure Island, and then farther south into Paso Grill, where there were some reports of some dead fish, but really the main impacts are just that airborne toxin that kind of sneaks up on you and causes you to have that dry cough. Let me show you here. Here is the latest report that this is going back to last Friday, so some of these concentrations may have changed, but you see the higher concentrations there. Let me go back up here. We're kind of getting away from me here. Come on back now. There we go. So you see there down through right there. So there's Pasadena. That's where Pasadena comes in to St. Pete Beach there in the northern end. And this is up towards like Treasure Island. There's Madeira Beach there at John's Pass. So medium to high concentrations there in that area. Farther south, this is Paso Grill down here. Medium concentrations of red tide there, and then even up into like this is kind of near Maximo Park and that marina there. Medium concentrations of red tide, so it's kind of starting to make its way up into the bay. We had a couple of sampling sites there on the south end of the Skyway reporting some low to medium concentrations of red tide, and even some lower concentrations of red tide up towards the Piney Point ejection and drainage area there. But nothing really up farther north into the bay off of downtown St. Petersburg. No concentrations, or maybe very little background concentrations. They're really keeping a close eye on that, because once you get red tide to make its way up into the bay, it gets very difficult to get it out of there, because the currents in the bay are really only driven by the tides. So you get it a wash out, then it gets trapped up in that incoming tide, goes right back in, back out, in. So once red tide gets up into the bay, it becomes very difficult to get it out. Meanwhile, out here on the coast, it's a little bit more influenced by the wind speeds. There's very little ocean current, if you will, along our coast, so really the movement of the water, and then thus red tide, is more of a factor of the wind speeds and those wind directions. And then there's higher concentrations of red tide even farther south. So that's what we've seen, is just a general progression. Last week mostly there was southerly winds, and there was at one point southwesterly winds, and they were taking the higher concentrations of red tide that were down here at southern Sarasota County down toward Fort Myers, and then those southerly winds were drawing up that red tide bloom and then, bringing it up into the Bay Area, which is kind of where it is now and will likely remain, at least for the next couple of days. Let me show you something, the latest forecast models going throughout this week. Right now, we have two different weather patterns that are influencing our weather. We've got a high pressure system to the northeast, so we've got a high up here, just off the Carolinas, and another high pressure system there in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So both of those highs are sort of combating to produce what we saw yesterday, and that was kind of a sea breeze type effect where you had an easterly wind over on the east coast that pushed winds inland, and then you had winds coming in like this from the northwest, and that resulted in onshore winds on both sides of the Florida peninsula. But that will change a little bit as we go throughout the week. So let me zoom back in here. So as we go through the next couple of days, we'll start to see that high pressure system to the north that will shift away from Florida. So we'll see more of a dominance of that eastern Gulf of Mexico high pressure system, and that will reinforce that northerly wind. So I think as we go through Tuesday into Wednesday, we'll probably still have northerly winds, but see as we go into Wednesday afternoon, the winds begin to shift more to the east, and that's as that high pressure system also goes to the east. So that will result in more of an offshore wind, and I think that's going to be good for us in terms of red tide. So you see the winds will likely push any sort of bloom that we have closer to our coast and maybe drive it away a little bit. The only thing that would keep it close to the coast is any sort of sea breeze that might then reverse that wind and push it back. And you can kind of see that happening into Thursday afternoon. See how the winds begin to shift by around, well, that was Friday. Let's do Thursday. So by Thursday, you have a little bit of an onshore wind that develops right there. It's not as pronounced on Thursday, but as we get into Friday, see how there's a little bit of a stronger push there. So we could see a little bit of that happening, but I do think, generally speaking, the second half of the week should bring some relief from that red tide really being pushed up against our coast. We'll see. We kind of look at the wind forecast as an indicator of where the red tide may go, but sometimes it's independent of that. So something that we're watching, maybe some relief from red tide, at least immediately on the coast through the second half of the week into the weekend. If you can find a spot on the beach that doesn't have red tide, and there are some spots, really remember, it's always moving with the winds and the currents. There's going to be some areas that's a little bit more concentrated than other. It's going to be great beach weather this week. 83 in Venice Beach, the UV index, it's getting higher. That higher sun angle is really starting to be felt. You'll get a sunburn in just a matter of about 30 or 45 minutes. 83 in Siesta Key, the water temperature's up to 75 degrees. St. Pete Beach will see a high of 80 this afternoon. Again, UV index around 8. And then Clearwater Beach has a high of around 79 this afternoon. That water temperature in Clearwater Beach looks like it's up there around 79 degrees as well. So the water is warming, the air is warming, great beach weather. If it weren't for that red tide is just, gosh, it's causing problems. If you're away from the water, it's not the red tide that's the issue, it's the allergies, the pollen. The pollen's still running very high. We're in peak pollen season right now, where mostly it's that tree pollen, a little bit of grass pollen every once in a while gets into the sampling, but the oak pollen, man, that to me is the worst one. It just flies, the wind blows, and sometimes it gets swept up into your house, and if you live near an oak pollen or an oak tree, then no doubt that oak pollen is really causing some allergy issues, and it probably continues for the next couple of weeks. So all my allergy sufferers out there, hang in there. And even my daughter, she's 4. It seems like she might have a little allergy to it as well. Like her face is starting to, like, every once in a while at the end of the day, she gets a little rash on her cheeks, and it's like it might be that tree pollen that's kind of starting to act up a little bit. But this will pass. We know the pollen will get better, right? The red tide, that's something that certainly can hang around for several weeks, if not months out there. But all of that said, we still have really nice weather. I mean, when you compare it to the rest of the country, our friends to the north, up into the Midwestern states and the Northeast, are still dealing with winter. You've got a more winter weather hitting the Sierra Nevadas up in California. You've got a wintry mix across the Great Lakes states. Minneapolis is looking at more snow, temps in the 30s there. Some wind and snow and cold temperatures in the Northeast. It's actually honestly not bad across the nation's heartland. St. Louis 73 today, Cincinnati 72 and partly cloudy skies. That's not bad. Texas looks pretty good, mid-80s with sunshine, but maybe a little bias. I'll take Florida sunshine over Texas sunshine. It looks pretty good out there today. Spring training also happening across the area. We have a few teams in action today, or at least a few teams at home today. The Rays are playing at around 1 o'clock this afternoon, 81 degrees. Obviously, that's inside the Trop. Normally, they play down in Northport, but because of Hurricane Ian, the stadium down there in Northport has some damage, so they're going to be playing all their home games for spring training in the Trop. The Yankees are playing tonight. Now, the Yankees, most of the spring training games are around 1, but today's Yankees are playing at 6:35, so a relatively rare night game for the Yankees on a Monday. 77 degrees, and then down in Sarasota, I believe, who is playing today? It is, I've got it here. Let's see, the Orioles. The Orioles are playing against the Phillies, and then Marlins are playing against the Rays, and the Pirates are playing against the Yankees today. So that's the lineup for spring training games. If you're in the area and you're going to a spring training game today, it should be great weather. I mean, aside from the pollen, right? But it shouldn't be an issue for red tide. That won't impact the ball game, or at least how you feel with those airborne toxins. But good-looking weather out there this afternoon. In fact, one of our local teams, at least for spring training, is down in Fort Myers today. The Detroit Tigers are playing against the Boston Red Sox down there today. I think their game's around 1 o'clock this afternoon. But there's a live view from where the Boston Red Sox play their spring training game down at JetBlue Park in Fort Myers. Looks like some of the grounds crews are starting to get out there. I don't think we see any of the players quite yet, but beautiful day down in Fort Myers as well. Temperatures down there where you're going to be in the mid-80s as well. So it's warm across the entire state today. Really warm stuff. This is the view back in St. Petersburg. We had the St. Pete Grand Prix this weekend. It's always so cool to see the Grand Prix go through the streets of downtown St. Pete. I love it. Every year, it's so cool to see. But you see there's the grandstands there. I think that's turn 10 right there in front of the Mahaffey Theater, the Dali Museum. You've got the boat marina there just off to the left side of the screen. And they'll begin deconstructing the racetrack. They'll take down all of the grandstands, and before you know it, it'll be back to the regular streets. But just this time yesterday, in fact, they were racing on the streets in downtown St. Pete. Pretty cool to see. 78 right now in downtown St. Petersburg. It's already warmer than our normal high temperature. Our normal high is 76 degrees. Can you believe it? We're already past that, and it's not even 11 o'clock yet. So, obviously another warm day. Sarasota at 81 degrees. A few showers out over the eastern Atlantic, or off the east coast of Florida over the Atlantic. Looks like a little mesocyclone there. You see that little counterclockwise circulation with that cluster of thunderstorms kind of fueling off of the Gulf Stream that's running up just off the coast. There's actually a stalled out frontal boundary right there as well, so that's adding a little extra lift in the atmosphere. But in terms of our weather as we go through the day today, we had some fog earlier. That's all out of here. More sunshine this afternoon. You'll notice that you see those little showers trying to pop up there. That's that little sea breeze boundary, or at least a boundary with that high to the west, high to the east, and all kind of colliding to run in and produce that line of showers. That'll happen probably towards this evening, and I think by the time they push any farther, that'll all die down. We might see some fog through early tomorrow morning. We're looking at probably some areas of patchy fog just start off Tuesday morning. Like this morning, that visibility could drop down to less than a mile, so it could be pretty thick in some spots. We had a couple of crashes on I-4 this morning, but once that fog clears out, turns out to be another really nice day. A lot of sunshine, temperatures back in the low mid 80s tomorrow afternoon. So very similar weather for the next few days. The only thing that we're really watching is going to be this weekend, and even that's a relatively low chance of rain. A cold front will sag in from the north. It could bring us some showers Friday night into Saturday morning. I've got just a 20% chance of rain at this point. The front hangs around into Sunday, generally south of us, and it might spark an isolated shower Sunday afternoon. Skyway 10K is on Sunday. That's the race where we all get together and a bunch of crazy people run across the Skyway Bridge. 10 Tampa Bay is a proud sponsor of that race. So race actually starts at, I believe it starts at around 7 o'clock. But because of the time change, I don't have this on the 7-day, but this weekend we spring forward. So that means we lose an hour of sleep, and that also means that sunrise will be an hour later. This morning, the sunrise was at 6:50, and that means Sunday morning, the sunrise will be around 7:50, or maybe a little before that in the morning. So this is the first time that the Skyway 10K has been held on the same day as daylight saving time. So there will be several waves of runners that will be running in the dark before the sun comes up eventually, probably toward the end of the race, because it takes even the fastest runners, it takes usually around, I think, like maybe 35, 40 minutes to run across the bridge. That's about 6.2 miles. So it's a long way to run up a hill and then down a hill. But aside from that, though, those small chances of rain this weekend, it looks like it's just more of the same. There are some long-term forecast models suggesting that through the middle of next week, we might see a good cool down, maybe knocking temperatures back down to normal, maybe even below normal. But for now, I mean, it's steady as she goes. Temperatures running 10 degrees above normal, maybe a little cooler than that this weekend, but at least near 80 degrees on Saturday and Sunday. So appreciate you guys watching, guys. Have a great week. Have a great Monday. And we'll be checking in later this week to see how that forecast is going to change for the weekend and check in on the potential for maybe some record high temperatures on Wednesday. We'll see. The record high on Wednesday in Tampa is 88 degrees. I'm forecasting a high of 86, so it's within reach, very close to reaching those record high temperatures. But more beautiful weather ahead. Take it easy, guys. Have a great Monday. Talk to you next time.